Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show that I again have not planned out at all, so it's going to be another great conversation. For those that haven't yet, by all means make sure you're liking the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. That way you get your emails whenever this goes live, which is going to be Fridays from now on. So, um, I want to get this started first off by saying, Tip, good to see you, man. It's been a little while. Travis, been a little while. Good to see you guys. This is awesome. Um, Tip, give us a little rundown on what you've been up to lately, because the last time I checked in, the you were at the House of Commons, right?
Oh no, House of Lords, House of Lords.
House of
So
Lords, right? Sorry,
yeah,
I forgot. We don't have
with it.
lords here.
I know, yeah. I don't. Well, never politics, never religion, but potentially that may something may change over his side as well. So, but we were at the House of Lords for just a gathering of former Royal Marines who are in business, and there's a bit of networking, and it's a catch up. And I think yeah, you benefit from it, but it's a gathering. It's a bit like similar to Remembrance Night. You come together, and it's a good chance to see people and see what they're getting up to. So bit of networking that was done. Uh, I'm leading into New Year with quite a few projects on. I've started working with the local Theatre Royal, doing we're generating workshops for veterans because we are incredible storytellers. Is just trying to harness them in and see if we can get their talents and get them out. And it helps with their state of mind as well. So we're doing a bit of that. I've got a film coming out actually that I'm in. I've got a credit in coming out on the 12th of January and on Sky Cinema, I think globally. One more shot, which I think I've got a line in it as well. So unless I'm on that cutting room floor, that's out next week. And a few other things, a few
Sweet.
plays, a bit more films. Just been lucky to be alive. You really.
I like it. I like it. That's fantastic. Travis, what have you been up to lately?
I'm a full time student, so I've been on winter break. I'm about to go back to school tomorrow. This is my first time back here, so happy New Year, fellas. Uh, Here's to good health, adventure, and fortune in 24, right? Yeah, went on winter break. Went to my son's house in Nebraska, visit my new grandson, and got back home last week and just been getting prepped for school, man.
That is awesome. I don't know what it's like to be a grandpa. I imagine it's going to be weird. Shaun, you're probably going to be a grandpa soon, so imagine you're going to have to deal with that. How's the mountains doing out there?
Yeah, well, we got a boatload of snow over the last few days. In fact, in the last week, we got about 40 centimeters of snow. So yesterday, I was out for a mountain bike ride on a fat tar bike, and if you fall off the bike, now you're pushing, man, and you don't want to push a big old bike like that in super deep snow. So even if you're doing 1 mile an hour, all twitchy and trying to maintain your balance, you just got to stay on the saddle, which is kind of like life. Hey, you've got to stay on the saddle. You got to keep pushing forward no matter what effort it takes. Even just a tiny little bit of forward momentum saves you the bigger struggle of falling off the bike and now pushing a big old bike through super deep snow. So yesterday was a reminder yet again of whatever it takes to maintain the correct balance, to keep moving forward just a tiny bit so that you don't fall off and have to work even harder to keep moving forward.
That's a great place to start. Tip, you got any thoughts on that?
Well, man, I'm a mountain leader, aren't I? So I love the snow, love mountains, and anytime like that, especially if Sean, you're the front guy and you're trail breaking, whether you're on skis or you're on a bike or on anything, that's the tough ticket. And I think when you lead from the front, when you're trail breaking, that's a good measure of a man, I think, as well, or a person.
Nothing quite like a good amount of trail breaking. That
Yeah,
it is, it is a slog.
it's
Trav, go ahead. Tip, what do you got?
oh no, just character building. And sort of just catch up as well. Obviously, on the grandparents front, I'm grandfather to seven, so I've got seven grandkids. So
That's got to be crazy. I imagine being a father is a pretty cool feeling, but
yeah,
being a grandfather on top of that, and then multiple times, does it get any weirder or does it get better? Like, is
No,
it?
but the truth is, and I'm sure Travels will back us up on that, is, you hear when you grow up, people going, it's so wonderful when you're a grandparent, you get to give your kid, the kids back, and all this sort of goes back to parents, but it's completely true. See, as a grandparent, I feel it is you've missed out that moral obligation to keep them on the straight and narrow, know what's right, what's wrong, what's the way forward, and build them up so they have the best in life. And then when you become a grandparent, it's just about fun. It's about crazy stuff. You're back being a kid. It is unbelievable. So I have to admit, I recommend it. It always brings, and it's even bringing me a smile to my face now because it's just brilliant. It's good news.
That's an interesting go around too. I really like that. Now I was just thinking that it's also one of the issues that I struggle with is like my parents when they start hanging out with my kids and they're just completely
Yeah,
out in left field doing all kinds of crazy stuff and you're just sitting there like, no, that's not how
that's
I
not. Yeah,
go. It's a
yeah.
tough one. Hard to hard to express that in general. Sean,
Yeah.
did your kids get a lot of your grandparents or not at all?
They did, and they look forward to it, of course, because grandparents generally show up with two big bags of candy and etc. And so that's just that's just how it goes. I think as a grandparent, at least from what I've seen, and I'm not even speaking specifically about our kids, our family. I'm speaking about general observations. It kind of looks like grandparents bounce in, have a boatload of fun, and then bounce out. And I think
Yeah, yeah.
that's great, man. I think I've heard it from everyone who's a grandparent that it's the best thing ever. You're gonna love it. Can't wait, etc. And I mean, how many times do you have to hear a thing until you start believing it? Well, that was several years ago that I started believing it. So, man, when it happens, if it happens, when it happens, it's going to be freaking awesome.
I
Yeah,
can't.
I think as well. I think it's the old. I think this generation, or the way we are now, we're quite young grandparents in relatively. We're not, we're not. I always think back to, you know, older people were grandparents when I was young. They were like, they're ancient. They're absolutely ancient. They must be like 3 million years old. Whereas now, I think we're really good nick for our age, and I think, and we still know how to have really, good fun and good fun with kids. So I enjoy it. I really do enjoy it.
That brings up an interesting question, but Sean, go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah, I was going to say the interesting thing is that, 30 years ago, grandparents actually didn't stick around that long. I
Yeah.
mean, they died sooner. I mean, let's just call it what it is. There was a shorter life term or life cycle, but nowadays that's extended, and there's kind of like two sides to the coin of what you just said, Tip. You and I are in decent shape to be able to hang out with grandkids. But people our age, I'm 60, you're about my age. I think we're right
I'm,
around, you
I'm
know,
nearly there.
yeah. So we do okay at our age, but everyone that's our age isn't in the same kind of cognitive or physiological or emotional fitness. And so, some people can barely get out of their car at
Mm.
60 years of age. And so they can't pick up their grandkids. They can't throw a ball. They can't chase the frisbee. They can't do all the things. And so, yeah, we are fortunate to be in the situation that we can goof off with our grandkids, but that longer life cycle or that extension of life that is in Canada now, the average age of a man is to about 78 years of age. And so that doesn't necessitate that at 78 that person is healthy or at 60 that person is healthy. So there has been an extension of life, but it seems to me that there's also been a reversal of fitness to some degree. And so, Tip, you'd be a great example of what can be accomplished as a grandparent, but not everyone is able to, get out of their car nowadays.
Yep, I understand.
That was the question I was going to bring up was the fact that like both all of my grandparents by the time they all lived into their 90s, but by the time they were in their 80s, they were mm, they were ambulatory. Let me put it that way. But like they didn't move around a
Mm.
lot, right? They were able to kind of get to their car and do their things, and they could do their shopping, and they were independent. But in no way could they play with the kids, in no way could they interact with us on much more than a I guess almost professional level, right? Like I remember they would kind of bring us presents, but they
On
would
a
kind of sit
polite
on the
level.
couch, right? But they would sit on the couch and they would just kind of hang out with us rather than play with us. And I remember some of my memories are playing chess with my granddad. But that was the only thing we could really play together, if that makes sense. So I'm wondering if do you think it's more of a like a cultural shift in that health and fitness is a bit more prevalent nowadays than it used to be? Or do you think that it just happens to be that that generation kind of didn't know or didn't understand? Travis, do you got any thoughts on this?
So you're asking what is the difference between like my grandfather and like current grandparents? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Yeah.
I might be an oddball. I mean, my last grandmother just recently passed away. She was 92, and it was. I wouldn't say she was ambulatory until the very end, but she was very active, gardening all the time, still out, like you would expect from an old stereotypical grandma. But then at the end, it was very rapid, and she passed kind of quickly at the very end. But I mean, most people today, they just sit around and watch TV, man. They just don't move. We see these quips all the time about you don't get old because you don't stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing. And you got to use it or lose it, man. My goal personally is just to be active until the very, very last. I want to go skydiving with my grandson. I want to teach him how to fly. I want to do a lot of things with him. And it's awesome for me. Both my grandsons are, they're very young. My oldest one's 5 and my youngest one's just 4 months now. And it's like so exciting for me to see my son grow into a father figure, see my daughter be a mother, and like experience that from this side it's very different from being a father. Like being a grandfather and seeing your kids become parents it's very fulfilling, man. It's really cool. And I hope that I can act or interact with my grandkids, kind of the way my dad's father interacted with me. I spent most of my summers as a young guy on the Eastern Oregon desert with my grandpa, just kind of farting around out in the desert, man, doing adventurous stuff and, fishing and hunting and getting into trouble and just exploring out in the middle of nowhere, out in the Western United States. It might be like Canada. There's a lot of like just public land. It's just open, it's not the same as it is back east. So we could just go wandering around aimlessly, and it was super awesome. And I hope to pass on that same kind of, adventure to my grandkids.
That's a great point. Tip, you got any thoughts on this?
No, I'm quite jealous as well because I mean, if you guys have been in Ireland or in the United Kingdom, we're all joined together, aren't we? It's just you go from villages to field to another village and free spaces. Like you got Dartmoor, you've got the Highlands, but even then they're owned by somebody, so you have to have right to roam and all that. So you're the ability to have adventures, though it's still there, and we still do it. It's a lot. There isn't as much freedom as you do definitely in Canada because I've been there and it's an incredible place, and in America, like over in the west and up in the northwest as well, it's just incredible places you can disappear as people do.
Absolutely. Shaun, you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I was thinking because Tippett said Dartmoor. I was born not too far from Dartmoor. And so it is a different way of life in the UK, just as it is in a lot of countries in the world. It's different how people run their lives, but their lives are sometimes predicated on how their parents live their lives, which is kind of what we're talking about right now, in the sense of Travis had talked about his family and how he was taken out as a young kid for adventures. Well, that's how a family is raised, in a silo of adventurers or not. If your grandparents kind of took you by the hand, took you fishing, or just threw you in the back of a car with a book, and then you stopped wherever you stopped, and then you got out, put the book in the car, and went for a walk, and halfway up a mountain you stopped and had a picnic. Well, that's the way you're raised, and that's what you get used to, and that becomes the norm, and therefore that's what you want to pass on to your grandkids. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you get out and kick ass, the more ass it's going to be kicked in the future. But that isn't what I see on the regular nowadays, as kind of we're alluding to the adventurous spirit is being replaced by the Netflix spirit. And so, how can kids be raised in a spirit of adventure if the parents are busy adventuring in Game of Thrones on Netflix as the proxy for adventure? And I'm not throwing TV or movies under the bus because, of course, Tip's on, and Tip needs a future career.
Believe me, looking like this, let's just say there's not many job offers out there. He's got a face for radio.
So I think that, we're raised how we're raised, and then it's our responsibility to either carry that forward or to modify it as we carry it forward. So for me, I've had to modify because my dad didn't go out into the bush with me, or he didn't go hunting or fishing with me. He didn't kick a soccer ball around with me. He did next to nothing with me. And so, and my mom wasn't sporty. So basically, it's not that I raised myself, but all of the things that were adventurous to me were on me. And if a buddy wanted to come out and bring a can of baked beans in the middle of winter to go hunt rabbits, well, now we've got an apple and a can of baked beans. If not, I'm going out there with an apple by myself and I'm going to adventure. And so, what's my responsibility in the next cycle, the next iteration of the family lineage, as it were? Well, it's to look forward to grandkids and kick their little arses up and down mountains, I suppose.
I got a question on this one. So I agree with you, Shaun. I definitely think it's what you were raised in, and then what you do afterwards. And I'm wondering, for those of us that we've seen, I guess, the dangers of the world. Let's put it that way. So I'm thinking back in the '60s in Grand Cache, it was pretty tame, right? Or not Grand Cache. Were you in Grand Cache, Shaun? Or was it? Yeah. It
Well, I was
wasn't
born
like
in England. I lived there 10 years, and I moved
yeah.
to Grand Cache in 1973. So
Right. Okay. So the '70s in Grand Cache was probably a pretty quiet area, right? And to go out and adventure seems like a pretty normal thing. But in the '90s, there was, like, I think parents got a lot more, not quite helicopter parenty, right? But there was still more control of what was happening. And I do remember being, going out all night in the city, showing up, before the street lights turned on, or showing up after the street lights turned on, or sometimes it was the next day. My parents were okay with it. But from a lot of parents of my generation now, I see them very aware of where their kids are and what they're doing, and having a very clear understanding of wanting to have kids to have phones so that they can contact them immediately. And I'm wondering what your guys' thoughts are on that, the kind of the concept of knowing where your kids are all the time, because there were lots of times when I was a kid that my parents had no idea where I was. Travis, what are your thoughts?
That's definitely a concern. And I think it's more of a concern because the information flow that we receive is generally negative. If you actually look at statistics, at least in the United States, you look at statistics for all the negative things you're going to think of when it comes to child abduction and all that stuff. The numbers have actually kind of been going down for quite a while. I know when I was a kid, in the '70s, '80s, like, dude, I would be gone from sun up to sundown. On the weekends, I would purposely try to have all my chores done before my dad woke up so that I could be gone already. Because if dad woke up and I was still at the house, more chores were going to happen. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted everything done and I'd be out of there. And I would skateboard until, I basically got so hungry that I had to come home, and my parents were cool with that, because kind of they trusted me. I mean, you maybe have like a little 5-point contingency plan or something, like, hey, this is who you call if you get in trouble. But, I think it's kind of more on the parents, as if you're afraid, fear is going to control you. But if you understand that there are dangers out there and you plan for those, have a conversation with your kids about, like, hey, what do you plan to do? Where are you going to go? How are you going to get there? How are you going to get back? What are you going to do if you can't contact me? What are you going to do if your phone dies? And just give them some ideas and then kind of grow on it, send them out for a few hours, build an adventurer as a parent. Your job as a parent is to is to raise a responsible, contributing member of society, right? Somebody that's going to contribute to your community. And I don't think you can do that by just being that helicopter parent and just sheltering them all the time. Allow them to go out and do things. I mean, for myself, when my kids were, teens and stuff, I feel like I was pretty open to them going out. My kids would probably argue that, but I didn't lock them into the house or anything like that. I didn't keep them away from the mall or anything because of, what possibly could happen. The world, unfortunately, it's a dangerous place, and you don't learn how to exist in that unless you're exposed to that. So, by keeping them in shelter, I think you're just doing a disservice to them and your community.
That's a great point. Tip, thoughts on this?
For me, I grew up in Belfast in the 70s and 80s. So let's just say it was and I had, yeah, it was incredible. So my fun was had by all those things that you've seen on telly in a lot of respects, because you're a young person and just that was it. That was the excitement. So that's what we did. We did all sorts of things, but morally, parents that used to give you, well, mine did anyway, give me really good, strong direction on what was right, what was wrong, and what was the way forward. And also, when I made sort of decisions to do what I wanted to do, they supported me in doing it, and that was an important thing. And I like to think we've done. I've done the same with my kids, but I think the pressure on young parents nowadays, and it's not only their own values or their own fear for their own children. I think it's the pressure from, oh, I don't believe they let their children do that, or oh my word, their child hasn't got a mobile phone in this day and age, really, this sort of stuff. And it's the bit of keeping up with the Joneses and not being seen to be, oh, you're a weak parent because you don't know where your kids are all the time, all day. Whereas I have to say, me growing up, that was the wonder. All those little adventures you had with your gang of friends and your brothers and your sisters and your mates, and you just disappeared. And you weren't angels, but you weren't bad kids. But you needed that. Well, I think I needed that experiential. Passage of rights. To do those little sort of things that weren't they weren't highly illegal, but they probably were breaking laws at some stage, even if they're just like, moral laws maybe, but you need those to, the highs and the lows and the times when you did mess up and either injured yourself or probably got yourself in trouble. You learned a hell of a lot from that, and you'll never learn that more, shall we say, more impactfully unless you experience it, I think. And it set me up in good stead for becoming, a commando and cracking on with it.
I love that. That's Shaun, you got any thoughts on this before I jump into what I was thinking? But go for it.
I do. So, when I was growing up in Grand Cache, so again, I would have been about 10 years old when I moved there and lived there for all through high school. And pretty much all the time I was hunting or fishing. And so it was way more dangerous what I was doing on the regular than being abducted. That's the only thing that would have abducted me out there was a mountain lion or a bear, which we had a boatload of in that town. And so again, I'd be grabbing my 22 caliber, my little Ruger 1022 that I bought when I was, I don't know, 13 or 14 years old. That was preceded by a pellet gun that was preceded by a BB gun. And so I'd go out there with, again, an apple and a lighter in the middle of winter and walk and hunt rabbit or hunt squirrel or hunt anything that moved. And I'd get way out there. And sometimes I'd be out there in the dark because I'd be heading home. And my parents, they had no idea at all what I was doing. None. The contingency plan was, I'm going out. And then I would come back. And so we didn't have contingency plans in my household. I would just grab my 22 cal and head out the door and sometimes be home before it got dark. And so it was way more dangerous growing up as a kid in those mountains with all of the things that could have gone wrong. I mean, in the middle of winter in Grand Cache, it's not uncommon that it would be minus 40 Celsius. And so if I'd have stepped the wrong way or fallen into the wrong creek or doing the wrong thing, then there's consequences on the regular out there in the hard mountains. And so, yeah, I could have crawled my way back to town, and I probably would have. But there's things that can go wrong out there as a kid out in the bush with no contingency plan. But somehow, all of the mistakes that I made and all of the things that I made to correct those mistakes as my iterations evolved through my childhood or my teenagehood, I just learned how to do life a little bit better. I learned how to, skin my shin or stub my toe or smash my nose into a tree as I fall down yet another snowbank. These are just lessons that you need to learn. I was thinking about Tip in Belfast, and I've been to Belfast a boatload of times. When when I was 8 or 9 years old, heading over to Belfast, it wouldn't be uncommon because, of course, my mom is Irish, and I've got a ton of aunts and uncles in Northern Ireland. It wouldn't be uncommon to sometimes if you were, and I was an outsider in Omagh, County Tyrone,
Mhm.
it wouldn't be uncommon to sometimes you'd be having rock fights, like just picking up rocks and chucking rocks back and forth at kids because they didn't know you. And the moment that an incoming volley of rocks heads your way, do you know what you do? You pick up some rocks and start chucking them back as you're retreating. That's just what I'm not going to say that's just what you did. That's just what I did when I was a young buck. If someone was throwing rocks at me, I was throwing rocks back. And so it wouldn't be uncommon to get a rock in the melon and have blood streaming down my face, and you wouldn't make a big deal out of it. It was just kind of that was the day. It would eventually stop bleeding, and then you'd be on to water pistol fights or you'd be on to whatever. And so, how I was raised as a kid was, I don't want to say wild, but I was not helicopter parented. That is for sure. And all along the way, the mistakes that I learned from were mistakes of my own doing, but the learnings were my own. So it was rare that anyone ever sat me down and talked about, well, you can't throw rocks at other kids. You just had to learn that eventually all the bleeding on your head the 10th time around, you don't do it an 11th time. So all the lessons were lessons that I imparted on myself mostly, rather than being sternly lectured on what to do and what not to do.
Interesting. Travis, you got some thoughts on this?
The best lessons hurt a little bit. All of the best lessons hurt a little bit, no matter what. I mean, it's just, whether that's getting hit in the head with a rock or embarrassing yourself or embarrassing your family or something, that shame or that actual physical pain, all those lessons have some amount of hurt associated with them so that you remember.
That's a great point. Tip, you got any thoughts on this?
Just I think it is that. I think it's a parental side. You know that it's a probability thing, and I think I would like to, and always, exactly what Shaun said and what we believe in, because I think we're all sort of we're products of that type of childhood. That ability to have adventures and make mistakes and pick ourselves up, brush ourselves off, and carry on with it. But I think as a parent, I think if and it's a very, I mean, it's one of those things. If you're one of those, that 0.01% of children that disappear or if something happens to them, it's one of those things. How could you? How would you feel, or how much burden of responsibility would you hold as well? And especially in this, I think in this day and age, the blame would be so much more, rather than it's just life and that's what children do. Now it's going, why did you let them get away? Why didn't you know where they were? And I think that, it's so much harder. I think it's so much more burden and it's so more open. So they're going to be across social media, press and everything. They're going to be, hung out to dry. And I think that's quite a scary thought, really.
That is a great point. I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that we used to see where we lived right before this one. There were lots of coyotes around all over the place, and there were a number of dens in the park that surrounded our house. So there were, cats would go missing, small dogs, things like that. And we'd always see the signs up and be like, looking for Fluffy and looking for this and hoping that this person's back. And in my mind, I'm like, coyote, got him. Like, yep, that it's dangerous out there. Don't let your cats outside. Like, it's in my mind, that makes perfect sense. You have danger, you're out in the danger, dangerous things happen. Okay. But to that point with kids, that's a whole nother ball of wax, because you are letting kids out into a dangerous world. So A, how are you preparing them, which I think is a great question. But B, also to your point, Tip, where does the fault lie, especially for yourself as a parent? Like, how do you engage that directly? That's a tough one. Shaun, you got any thoughts on this?
Well, we've raised our boys in a way that they haven't been spoon-fed or coddled overly or too much. And so you can tell when you've made the right decisions when you hear your growing boys say things like, both boys were here for the Christmas holidays, both back reading break, or sorry, a break from university. And my son Evan, oldest son, would say things like, well, I've got to take the bus to university, but it's only a 20-minute bus ride. And then when I get off the bus, it's about a half-hour walk back to my rental accommodation, but no big deal. And so that half-hour walk to the bus stop and standing there waiting for the bus, and then the half-hour walk back, non-factor, because from the time they've been in elementary school, from our house, they would have to walk. Doesn't matter what time of year, doesn't matter how much snow is falling. They would have to walk all the way to school, which was about a half hour, when they were like, 8 years old. And so they've done that solo trip so many times in all the weather that it's a non-factor to walk in inclement weather. And so if somehow my oldest son was in another country and got lost, well, no big deal, because they've been lost before. If he stubs his toe, no big deal. He stubbed his toe before. If he ran into a confrontation, no big deal. He's been on the BJJ mats for about 8 years. And so all of these things that are stacked up as they're growing up as kids, exposing them to them solving the problem, them facing the routine of difficulty. That's kind of how we've raised our kids, so that whatever difficulties, the normal difficulties that someone would face in the regular world, I'm not talking about abductions or, a plane heading directly to you and it's a fiery crash 10 feet in front of you. I'm not talking about the super abnormal worries that any parent might have. All of the usual worries that a parent might have, we've kind of had our boys in the training program before they left the house. And so I feel that it's our responsibility as parents to set our kids up for success, not just to merely let them survive. It's that kind of overly used thrive rather than survive statement. But I do believe that you got to teach your kids how to thrive, not just get by barely in life.
That's a great point. Travis, you got a thought?
Just to add to that, I would also say, as a parent, and it's also your responsibility to teach them how to be a part of your community. And you can do that, and you can get some situational awareness just in your neighborhood. Like, definitely know who your neighbors are. If you don't talk to your neighbors, giant mistake. You should probably know every household in your neighborhood. I know there's some pretty big neighborhoods out there now, but, for a quarter mile around your house, just like, hey, man, my name's Travis. I live right there. I got 2 kids. They're running around the neighborhood. If you see them doing some crooked stuff, maybe not so wholesome, why don't you let me know? And I'll do the same for you. Does that sound good? Cool. And then people and you grow the neighborhood, and in my opinion, you are responsible for maintaining your community. I know that's kind of counter to a lot of what people say nowadays, at least in the media. But, if I personally see some crooked stuff going on, I'm stopping it, dude. If I'm present and somebody tries to, commit a crime in my presence and I witness it, I'm intervening in that. I am going to stop it. And, if more men did that, we would have a much nicer place to live. But a lot of dudes now are scared because, they're afraid of what the system might do to them as a result of their interference, and 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 fear will control the populace more than anything else. So don't be scared, man. Do the right thing regardless. Get out there, know your neighbors, know your community, know the cops that work the beat, know the firemen down at the fire station, and be involved. And your kids will see that. And then when they grow up, when they go off to college and stuff, they'll knock on the door like, "Hey, what's up? I'm Travis. I'm taking this class and I live right there, man. If you got a problem, let me know." And they'll just, you have to be the example. I've said this before here, is like, you have to be the example. So get out there and do stuff,
I really like that tip. You got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a parent, you are a role model, so you are the example. So you have to, and again, I think you have to do it, but I think you have to be able to do it. And if you're not able to do it, you subconsciously just be that example and carry on with it. I think you have to proactively think about, right, how am I going to perform so that my kids do take the right messages? I mean, my biggest fear for young people now, and that are stepping up to that mark, becoming adults, I think a lot of it isn't. I mean, society is a scary place anyway. The world is. I mean, just look around the world at the minute. It's a very, very, very hard place, and quite a violent place at the minute. And which surprisingly, I think we should have evolved away from that, but it is considered. It's you say society is more sedentary. They watch Netflix and that, but then we still have those extremes of violence, and maybe because it's more documented. It's there. We see it live all the time. That's quite scary. My biggest fear for them is just the financial aspect. Because even now, I look at my young people that are looking to buy. It's the same in the States. I'm sure it's the same in Canada. I know it's the same in Australia. And that there is trying to get on the property ladder. Simple things like that. Where these are very intelligent, very professional, very keen, very active young people, but just the mere fact of being able to step onto that property ladder or to get themselves on there, unless they've got, one of those very, very few, they've got an incredible job that gives them the salary, they can jump in there. For most, it isn't. It's a really, even those that are professionals will struggle for those, where we took it for granted and we sort of took the hit. And even now, I'm thinking about, I don't have a mortgage now because I bought my house, so, over years now. But the thought of what they're paying for mortgages and the house prices now in the United Kingdom and in Europe and in Ireland, I'm just thinking, it's just mind blowing the size their mortgages are and how much and how long they're going to have to pay off their mortgages and how much they have to put down to be able to get the property. And that's only on house pricing, but financially across the board, with austerity, with the way inflation's affecting people and the cost of living, simple things like food's gone up like, 3 times in the last like 3 or 4 years. You know what I mean? It's more than doubled. You know what I mean? And I've never seen it go like that in my time frame. So all those things are just compound. Wages aren't going up. I'm just thinking it must be it's quite daunting for young people now, just on that adventure. I think it's harder for them than it was for me, I think.
There's a really interesting point in this, and I'm wondering what your guys' thoughts are on it, is that when I was a kid, I've said this before, my mom was like a hippie, right? And she used to tell us things that would keep kind of her safe, but weren't really in our, I don't know if I would consider it best interest at the time. But so for instance, she used to tell us to not talk to police officers, right? Because if they knew that she was smoking marijuana when we were kids, then the kids might be taken away, right? She was worried about that. And so I grew up not talking to police officers and having this like disdain almost of talking to them just in general. And first responders and anybody in a uniform kind of became this nebulous like authority figure that I didn't want to deal with until I joined the military. And then I met and talked to people who were former police officers or who were going into that kind of realm, right? And the way in which we raise our children in order to do these things, like you were saying, Travis, and Tip, to be the example. One of the things that I did when I first had kids was I would wave at police officers, right? Just on small things, right? Say hi to people. I would growing up in the country, you drive down the road and there's the 4-finger wave on the steering wheel, and you go like this as you pass each other, right? What's up? You don't know who that is, and my wife was very confused when I started doing that around her, because I was just like, I want everybody to know that I'm creating a friendly environment here, right? Let's talk, let's engage with each other, let's go on the side of benefit rather than the side of, ooh, I don't know who that person is, I don't want to talk to them. But to your point about the financial stress right now, is that, man, there's a lot of ambiguity in the world, I think. Whereas when I grew up, there was a lot of consistency, if that makes sense. Have you guys noticed something similar in that? And that it was like back in the day, you could almost know what to expect in any situation, whereas now it's just like, who knows what could happen? Shaun, what do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't categorize it as that. In fact, I would take the opposite opinion. I think that I think there was less known 20 years ago. There's more known today. And so if you feel that, or I'm not speaking to anyone on the panel, obviously, if anyone right now who's listening to this feels that the world is more ambiguous, it's just because you haven't cracked the books, or you haven't done the research, or you haven't talked to enough people, or you haven't looked at the ambiguity of the moment. Like, there's tons of ambiguity out there if every day you're Netflixing. If you're Netflixing your way through life, the world is getting more ambiguous. But if you feel that you're falling behind on understanding how the world works, then you get to make a decision. Either you start to understand the world, or you just put your arms up and it gets more and more confusing. I don't find the world to be confusing at all. I don't find it to be ambiguous at all. I find that the older I get, the clearer I am on the world that I live in. When I was 20, it was ambiguous, but it isn't now, because I've put my nose to the grindstone to try to understand my internal world and my external world. So I think that nowadays there is a better opportunity to remove some of the ambiguity of the moment. But then that requires effort, that requires work, and that's where it all falls apart. As a young person, and I'm with Tip, that it is difficult nowadays. The real estate market in North America and in the UK and Europe as a whole, moving around the planet, real estate is the challenge for our kids. But then, as you were saying that, Tip, we were just in Ireland last summer. This is what I thought as we were driving down the road. I cannot believe the amount of brand new cars that are on the road. I mean, way more brand new cars than there should be. And so if it's hard to buy a house, but it's easy to buy a car on a monthly payment scheme, then that's now a matter of priorities. The ambiguity of the moment is not understanding what a person wants in their mid-future to long-term future. If someone shrugs their shoulders and says, I can't afford to get into the real estate market, but anyway, this weekend I'm going down to look at the new sexy car that just got released last week. I'm into it. I hope it's silver. I like silver. And so, priorities of knowledge seeking, priorities of consumption, priorities of what your mid to long-term future should be. These are things that you get to decide, or we all get to decide on how we shape our lives, how we control our lives, how engaged we are in our lives. If there's any ambiguity in anyone's life right now, it's easily solved by determining, I'm going to go clear that up right now. I'm going to learn more about that right now. I'm going to get better at that right now. 20 years ago, it wasn't as easy as it is today. Today, it is supercomputers everywhere. You can find out anything at any time if you really put your mind to it.
That's a great point. Tip, any thoughts on this?
So it's as we talk about it all the time in the collective, and we understand it, and we understand exactly what it's all about. But what I find through, and this is life experience, military experience, especially what I realized in my time in the Corps was that, and it's an important thing to me. Everything that's valuable and wonderful in life belongs to nature. But here we are on this technical setup, across the pond, cracking on, speaking to each other. I love it. But everything in nature, from being out there, being outdoors, being on the sea, being on rivers, being up mountains, being in snow, being, everything about nature, human beings, good human beings, obviously as well, but good human beings. Oh, that's to me, that's the value I wonder in life. But what I realized from my service was understanding finance and understanding and doing your sums and realizing that the only thing anything which I find in business and in military life is finance to do with sums. So the only thing anything's going to happen or go forward with is if you have the finance to back it up. So if you as a young person can harness that understand its importance in making things be for you, but the fact is, but understand that it is a superficial nonsense that it'll get you there. All the wonders is still to do with nature and people and everything else. But it's just, if you can get that, understand it, but harness the importance of finance, I think it's a good one, because a lot of people know, like you said about, the new cars, that's the priority. And I go, yeah, I mean, but we can say that with hindsight because we're all gits. But we never used to know when those mega mentors and wonderful people like you, my dad as well, used to give the old, you really should do this. And you're like, oh, yeah, of course. What does he know? The old git, I mean, and then you crack on. But those little words of wisdom, every single one of them were magical. And that's just, if I could pass that on to the young people that are important in my life and just give it, just think about it. But just I'll give you this, it's yours, but you don't have to don't go, what does that all get now? So just have it, and then if they have it, then it just shows that it sort of like resonates in their head at some stage. They'll benefit from it, and it's given from the heart for them to benefit, to better themselves. But it's, yeah, but that everything you said, it is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Travis, you got any thoughts on this?
This is like the parents show. Like,
Sorry.
full on, like the old guy, freaking the Greybeard episode, right? So absolutely, I got something. I throw my 2 cents in there. My 2 cents to the younger generation, with all of these issues, is that speaking on being ambiguous, like question everything, even your beliefs, and be open to another opinion all the time. Like, even if you whatever your political leaning, whatever that may be open to another interpretation and be, inquisitive about that. You have to be open to receiving information so that you can make a educated decision on where you're going, whether that is, how those interest rates are affecting your finance, or why are those interest rates so high in the first place, dude? What did we do to make this happen, or to allow other people to make this happen for their benefit? And then the more you learn about that, you might be like, hey, maybe it's time for me to participate in my community and get a little bit more politically active so that these things don't happen, and protect yourself and protect your community from these people. You have to question everything, and honestly, in my older age, I think that I've been able to question my own beliefs a lot more. For a good portion of my life, I was laser focused on one mission, and that was great. And, it was necessary at that time. And then kind of in hindsight, some of the things, it's like, that doesn't add up, and now I'm in a position where I can question, what was going on back then? Why did that go down the way it did? And then I can apply that to situations today and make a more educated, decision on where my stance is regarding whatever situation I'm looking at, but always question, never be just so definitive that you are not accepting any other point of view because you're right and the other guy's wrong and he's a fascist and he's not, and I'm good and you're bad and blah, blah, blah. It's just, when people are like that, to me, it just makes me think they're dumb. When somebody's just not open to talking at all, like, dude, are you dumb? Like, why would you not want more information? I'll listen to anybody, dude. I don't care, just to get more info so I can make a better educated decision. So my advice, always be open to the other side and question everything.
Absolutely. I just absolutely love that. Are you dumb? That's fantastic. Sean, you got any
Yeah, are
thoughts
you
on
dumb
that?
or stupid?
I feel the same way. I mean, sometimes I think the exact same sentence. Are you freaking dumb? What is even going on right now in your head, pal? Sometimes I do think that. It's not like super common, but I do think it from time to time because it's so apparent that they are not a thinking person. And so, like, how do you change that? Well, you can encourage it. You can try to come at it from different angles to encourage some creative thought in that person, but ultimately there's people out there that just don't want to play that game of getting better or thinking outside of their tiny little matchbox. um, Back to the parenting show, which is kind of what we're doing a little bit. I just want to say that we've been talking about finances, and it is super important. It is something that should be taught in the educational system, but it isn't, at least not to the degree where it moves the needle. And so, as parents, my wife mostly, and I say mostly, 97% of it has been my wife who has taken on the responsibility or the role of teaching our boys finances, or teaching them how to save, or the magic of compound interest, or how to invest. So they've been invested in the markets now for some time. And just this Christmas, as an example, she sat both boys down and reviewed with them, or had them review with her, how their investment portfolios are doing. That this is money that they've been putting into savings and et cetera since, kind of like the paper route days, or the washing dishes days as a 12-year-old, or doing odd jobs, or to Travis's point, how to best get to know your neighbors. Well, go 2 houses down and look after the cats. And when the neighbor says, I want to compensate you for that, as a parent, as you're standing there listening to the briefing, you can then decide, what's the lesson in this right now? Sometimes the lesson is, thanks, but $4 an hour is too much. Let's make it $2 an hour. Or sometimes it should be along the lines of, no, happy to do it. The boys are happy to do it for free. They're happy to volunteer their time. Or sometimes it's a case of $10 an hour. That sounds fair. Thanks. And so as a parent, you don't have to make decisions for your kids on all financial aspects, but you've got to get involved in it. And it's not just a case of a digital investment where you put your money into a nebulous digitized network and then you track your ones and zeros to see if you're making money or losing money. There's ways to invest financially in all kinds of things. I'm thinking of our boys when they were both young and junior high, so they would have been about grade 6 or so, grade 7. And the school ran a little entrepreneurial class, and by class it wasn't a full semester. It was just a way to teach the kids how to think like an entrepreneur, how to make money. And so the boys set up a lemonade stand in the class, or sorry, in the school hallway, and they found a way to make like a boatload of money. And my oldest son hired our youngest son for a very minimum wage, almost unfair wage, and started like working the system so hard, and was making so much money that eventually one of the teachers had to shut it down, just because there was kids lining up in the hallways, because now he was going down to the grocery store and buying baked goods and flipping those for 2 times. So he was raking in the cash, and the example that he was setting was a good one, but too good, because kids were starting to pay attention. Now they were skipping class to try to make a buck in the hallway. And so the lessons in life are, with our kids, I suppose, are, how wild do you let it go? How much do you want to let their excitement and their curiosity and their exploratory natures, how much to let it go? Well, I don't think you should ever cripple it, but I think that you've got to pay an eye on it, or keep an eye on it. And that is all finances. That is all things, in my opinion. So when I was a kid coming up, going out into the bush and hunting till all times of the day, and it was risky, of course. I would have liked someone, an adult, to sit me down and say, okay, let's talk about if this, then that. Let's talk about when this happens, what are your next steps? And I wouldn't have had next steps. All of my next steps were, dang, my feet are freaking freezing in these hiking boots right now. It's minus 40. I'm in wet jeans because I fell into a river. Now what do I do? Well, I survived, obviously, but those were really stupidly hard lessons that I had to learn growing up in the bush, kind of thing. That's not how we're supposed to raise our kids. I think there's an easier way to raise kids than having them be an 1807 cowboy like I was trying to be. So I think that, there's a balance in there that blends modern society with old-timey society. Those old-timey lessons will stand the test of time. They will last forever on how to raise a kid, how to interact with your community, how to be a good person. Those are infinite, forever things. But it's how to manage the modern society eroding some of those things that is the balance, so that I think, so that it doesn't become uncool.
That is a tough conundrum for sure. Travis, you got any thoughts on this?
Just at the last point, like balancing the old and the new, like I think you can apply this directly probably to all of our military experiences. We as parents stuff, you got to teach the fundamentals first, right? There has to be a foundation of skill. And then when you apply technical advancement and machinery to those fundamental skills, then you compound your capability. I'm sure all of us learned how at first to do terrain association, and then we learned how to do dead reckoning, and then you combine dead reckoning and terrain association so that you could move fast and you could find where you were going. And then like, hey, look at this thing, what's this? It's a GPS. Like, wow, cool. And you applied that to a fundamental skill that you had. You already knew how to navigate, but when you take this whiz bang gadget and apply that to your fundamentals, then you just are that much more awesome. The same thing applies to virtually everything today that we, as the older generation, complains about. If you were to apply these technical advancements to our fundamental skills, then it's better all around for everybody. And that happens quite a bit. I think, at least, like, I'm a Gen X guy. My parents are boomers, and sometimes I think the boomer generation just, like, whatever tech thing, just get rid of it. Like, I just don't even want to take the time to learn it, and that's kind of a mistake. I think that thing might allow you to communicate with your great grandkids a little bit better. So you might want to learn how to use it. It's funny to see a lot of what my kids do now. I'm seeing my older grandson do. Like, he can use a tablet or a phone. Like, I mean, he knows how to navigate it. He's 5 and he's just like, boom, done. And I'm still, sometimes trying to figure out these different apps myself, and he's got it because it's intuitive, because he's grown up with it, But if you give him some basic skills, and then he can apply that technical know-how to those skills, then he could be, pretty beneficial to the community, or dangerous, or what have you,
Absolutely. Tip, any thoughts?
Oh, no, I think, Travis hit the nail. It's all about fundamentals, and you put it down to life as a soldier. If you can operate with you pack on your weapon system in all climates and all terrains, that and you're good at it. After that, you layer on technology. Your capability just grows so big because you got those fundamentals so good, and you're that robust, operator, and that's the important thing. If you get that right, all the toys that go with that, including vehicles, including bigger weapons and support weapons, everything, just it multiplies rather than enhances. It multiplies what you're doing, and I think that's across the board in life. If you get the fundamentals right, it sets young people up to basically squeeze every ounce of what life's about and enjoy it with people, and and be part of life and part of society and support their communities, whatever it is. And that brings a smile to my face, really. That's a positive thing, that and I think what's hit me over Christmas this time, I've had some news where somebody very close to me who's got cancer, and it's the finite time that we have to enjoy that adventure. So you know what I mean? So everything we got, and if we set people up to really milk the world in the wonders of it, you know what I mean? Understanding, you know, I mean, the downside and the the Netflix era, the how you can get drawn into certain things if you don't have that variety, or if you lose the human side aspect of what we are, what the human being is, then you'll miss out on it, because again, the finite nature of life is that we're all going to die. Some of us through operations or whatever else that are, maybe for others. Yet we are here sitting chewing the fat, the four of us, and we've all of us lost mates on operations. So those people that love them haven't got that opportunity. So you think about it, and then we've got people that got through COVID. A lot of people lost their lives, but also then there's this cancer, and that it puts everything into perspective of really, like, us talking about this and just getting the best of wonderment of life and of humanity, and just doing it and smiling every day, and those people you love, make sure they know every day that you love them. Like, it's really important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I I tell people this all the time: take lots of pictures. Take lots of pictures, right? Like, and we kind of laugh about it, but I know lots of guys in the military that spent 15, 20 years and they have like a dozen photos of 15 to 20 years of their life, right? And it's such a it's a pain for them. I look back at all my pictures and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember those times. Oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, that guy. Oh, right. But I think that's part of life too, is that you want to bring some of your past forward, but you don't want to carry it all at the same time, right? Travis, you got a thought? What do you got?
My first unit, if you got caught with a camera on ops, you got the boot. Like, you were done.
Yeah.
So we didn't have any cameras back then. Like, that was a no-go. I even
That's
like I see
that's a massive big no go for us as well.
I see some of the guys, and I don't even know if they're real or not, but I see some of the stuff that's up on the internet now, and I'm like, whoa, man, I can't believe that's out there. But it is awesome, and I look back on my life, and I'm like, man, it would have been awesome if I would have had even the operational pictures that I handed over to the man. Like, man, if I could get a copy of that, that would be really cool, to have just for myself, to look at it and just be like, yeah, that was a good day. The bringing the past forward, I think, is definitely important also, but you're always evolving. You can't just, I guess you can't, I mean, nothing's decisive, definitive, but I try to be who I am today and not dwell on what I was in the past. That definitely shaped my life, and that's made me who I am today, but I'm still learning. I'm still a student of life, and I want to learn stuff, and I want to grow, and I want to continue to contribute and live. So you can't just expect your past to carry you through your today. You have to participate in today in order to do that.
Absolutely. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, well, as parents, I think that it's not only important for us to kind of live in the now, but by living in the now, we're demonstrating to our kids what we're doing presently, concurrently in this moment. And so, this, as Travis said, to bring the past forward and constantly live in the past in the present. I know a lot of guys who do it. They would take those photos, and every day they would look at those photos from 10, 15, 20 years ago, and they would focus their entire day on reflecting back on 15 years ago and not get anything done today. They would almost not quite pat themselves on the back for their past, but would be okay with not accomplishing more today or in the future simply based on a photo. That not that they're resigned to the fact that, well, I did it, I've done it, I don't need to do anything else. It's a case of a sense of satisfaction with the past that somehow allows someone to not pursue further or be more. And so that's just not how I've run my life. And maybe it was taught to me in the military, that relentless pursuit of excellence in certain units. That's just what you had to be in order to keep doing your job. I carried that out of the military with me, and that's just how I think nowadays, and always have since my military days. That relentless pursuit of excellence, which has me now currently starting to write a book with Seb Lavoie. And so that's not something that I planned on doing, but that's something that I'm going to hunt relentlessly until it's completed. And in order to do that, I made a post just a few days ago where I've got a large book. It's a just over 700-page nerd book on computer system engineering that I wrote a long time ago. And I've got it on my side table in the living room right now. And that book will sit there, all 700 plus pages of it, until I'm finished writing this book. And so I'd put the post up on Instagram about how that book is going to sit there until I'm finished this book, because that 700 plus page book is a reminder to me of how freaking hard it was to write that book. I mean, it was a drainer. It was like hard grind to finish that book. And if anyone's read that Instagram post that I put up, you'd understand why it was hard, because of the amount of hours that I was working before I started to write the book. And so the book is a reminder of you can always do harder things, like the photos from the past, guys who would have photos from 15 years ago. That photo should just be a reminder that you did hard things and you still can, rather than just being a reminder of you did hard things and you check that box and you don't have to do anything more. So my son had said, and this is to my point, because they do pay attention, but at times when I don't think they are. My son had said to me just before he went back to university this time, "Hey, at least I wrote a book, but maybe not a 700-page book." Because my son has also written about a 350-page book, a fiction during the COVID lockdown. To keep himself busy every day, he would write. So he finished a book. And so now he's contextualizing his book against my book, which is not, that's not what I hope for. But what it does demonstrate is that he's paying attention, that he understands that I grinded super hard. He grinded super hard. No one won the competition. But what he sees is that his dad has grinded in a fashion that I understand how hard it is, or how hard it was for him to write a book. And so all of the things from the past that we've done shouldn't be things that we rest our laurels on, or just kind of kick it back even more and think, yeah, I've cracked all the things out of the park. What it should be is just another thing from your past that helps you understand I can kick out more out of the park. Everyone on this panel has done stupid hard things in their past. And whatever the most insane hard thing that any one of us has ever done, as far as I'm concerned, is just another tool for us to reflect on and think, well, I know I can do that thing tomorrow because I've done harder in my past. So by us demonstrating to ourselves that we can always do more in the future because of the hard things that we've done in the past, I do believe that others pay attention to that, like our kids, as an example.
That's a great point. Tip, you got any thoughts on that?
I've gone. You got me on my own hold, am I?
No, you're good.
Oh,
You're
good. Yeah, I mean, everything Shaun said, it's all about that. I think that measurement, those guys that are sort of like still looking into the past. I think that's. I mean, I've never been diagnosed, but we all know people. We all know people. And we, all of us here have all suffered in some way from experiences that we've had, both mental health and that there. But I think the guys that do, and it was one friend of mine who was involved in said we released hostages in West Africa about 20, 25 years ago, and he not long afterwards he got cancer, but he died. But him holding on to that experience of quite quite a ruthless and bloody battle that they had. But that was he couldn't get away from that. And while he was going through his hard period with his obviously illness, that was like the focus for him. And where you didn't want him to have that, you wanted him to move on and get on to something else. So it's that when you hold on to things of a traumatic nature or something out there from our time on operations, it's definitely something that we all know this. We know this, but we should obviously have an ear to them to try and get them away from that. Because that's when you're looking backwards, especially to those type of things. I don't think it's really healthy for you. It's good to talk about it, but it's always looking forward rather than that way. And sometimes you feel that they're still looking backwards instead of looking forward.
Absolutely. Trav, any thoughts?
Indeed. Purpose is what we're talking about. It's nice to reminisce in the past, and back then you had a certain purpose and you were striving towards that, and you maybe achieved that purpose, and then you got to continue to move on. I think for like Shaun says, the continuous pursuit of excellence, that purpose, at least for me, it kind of like it continually is just out of reach. I'm trying to get it, and I'm always trying, and it's like nope, and it's just scooting back. But I'm not going to stop chasing it, dude. I'm always after it, and I don't know what it feels like to not do that, so I can't really tell someone who's having problems with, they're living their past life every day. Like, you have to have, a man has to have some kind of purpose that propels him forward in life. Whether that's taking care of your family and making life for your family better, whether that's just learning, acquiring knowledge, whether that's acquiring skill, whether it's a combination of everything, like whatever. But you have to have some kind of purpose, to get up in the morning, to go to work, to go to class, to go out in the shop and build something, to make something, whatever it is. There has to be some purpose involved with it, and kind of projecting that purpose. You have your 25 meter target, and then your 50, your 100. I got 1,000 meter target out there, and these are benchmarks that I'm going to meet. And then when I'm almost to that 1,000 meter target and I finally look up at it, bro, it's 2,000 meters away again. Like, what happened? I just got to keep setting them targets out there and keep going after them. I'm knocking them down for sure, but as soon as I knock one down, another one pops up, and I'm just boom, boom, boom. And that takes a certain bit of character to do for yourself. Sometimes I'll just sit down and like, really, where am I right now? Where do I want to be a year from now? 2, 5. Where do I want to be at the 5-year mark? Cool. What do I have to do between now and then to make that happen? And where am I going to take a break? Kind of gather myself, like those things, and that's a loose plan kind of, but it is a plan that I can fraggle along the way, and some of those benchmarks are pretty solid, and some of them, they'll move back and forth, but I have a purpose, and I encourage every man to have that purpose. And if you have influence on younger men, then you should use that influence to find out what their purpose is. Do they have one? And like help them out. We're old, dude, graybeards. It's our job now. It's our job now to help the next generation. I'm not quite as fast, strong, but I'll still give you a run for my money, man.
Make them pay for it. I like it.
Yeah. You're.
Oh. Yeah. The challenge I find, and I want to see if you guys recognize this or not, or if it vibes with you, is the fact that a lot of that planning I learned in school, and I learned it in school through like wood shop, metal shop, home ec, like the trade style things that I used to learn in school. And I look at my kids now, and they don't get that at all. They get the arithmetic, and they get the writing, and they get the standard curriculum, social studies, and all these things. But there's not a lot of the extracurricular stuff that used to be in school. And I remember at one point, this was way back in the day, but they offered a Latin program, and I was like, yeah, cool, that'd be neat. Let's learn a dead language. Like, awesome, this will be fun. But I was looking at it in terms of, well, I can use that for something later, right? Latin is still used quite often in the STEM research area, so that might be something I can look at. I was able to use my woodshop training. I was able to use home ec to create plans and then execute on them, right? I could say if I want to build a table, well, okay, well now I need to start with the tabletop, and then I need to build some legs, and now I need to build some supports, and now I need to da. You could plan it out all ahead of time, figure out what you want to do, and then you could execute on them and have, as you said, Travis, those little benchmarks, right? Bang, tabletop's done, cool. Now I can move on to legs. Those are done too. Okay, bam. But I'm wondering, do you guys think that do you think it has something to do with school-driven areas, or do you think it's more of a home-based development? Travis, what do you think?
I think it's a combination of those things. Obviously, you know, your home life is gonna have some effect on your education. Definitely school as well. You know, same as when I was a kid, I had took every shop class that there was. You know, metal shop, wood shop, carpentry, cabinet making, like all those things. You know, and they do teach those skills of planning. You know, you have to get a bill of materials first. You have to make a plan. Where am I going to do this stuff? That's definitely building those skills. I think probably right now, at least in the States, I'm not sure about Canada, but at least here, I think there's kind of a realization has happened with our kind of academics, you know, that a lot of companies, you know, big corporations are looking at college graduates and saying like, man, these guys really don't know how to do anything. You know, they got a piece of paper that says they're like Einstein, but they can't actually work a shovel. Like they don't have any common sense, you know, and there's kind of like they're pulling, you know, they're not making a college degree a requirement for employment anymore. Whereas, you know, through the majority of my lifetime, if you wanted to get a good job at a big, you know, corporate job, you had to have a college degree. And I think they're recognizing now that just pure academics is not sufficient to be a critical thinking, like problem solving type go-getter, you know, and that's what companies want, you know, to turn a profit ultimately. And they need people that can solve problems and they can execute, you know. So I think the kind of the worm has turned, maybe like they're like society kind of operates in cycles, and we'll probably get to a point where somebody's like, hey man, we should probably have a lot more book smart people. And then, you know, the academics will be a little bit more important, you know, maybe 30 or 40 years down the road. But I think right now, at least here, the focus on pure academics is I don't want to say it's not being frowned upon really, but it's being realized that that's not sufficient. You know, there's a big push to get kids into trade schools again, and we need plumbers and electricians and carpenters and all those things that are not really or haven't been as sexy per se in society as being a, you know, a corporate guy, a suit, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is you know what's really sexy is $180 an hour being a welder. Like that's good money. Tip, what's it like out in the UK?
Actually, when Travis said that appetite is very, very similar. So you think about it, young people now, they'll go to university, and if they don't have, like, you know, support from the parents through the loan system, they'll end up with about a 50K. So that's £50,000. So what's that, about $70,000? You know, I mean, US dollars. Going rate, but they end up with that debt when they leave school. They'll probably not leave university or college, and when they leave that, they'll probably not work in the environment they've studied and accrued that debt for, and they probably won't get a job in a professional job. So if you look at it, even people joining the Royal Marines now, 65% of our recruits are graduates, university graduates, and they're enlisting as Royal Marines. So, you know, they've all got degrees, but really they have not benefit. Whereas a lot of young people now are going, if I do an apprenticeship and become a plumber or an electrician, whatever else, I get paid as I'm doing an apprenticeship, but also I end up with a skill. And I have to admit, the demand, exactly what Travis said, the demand for plumbers, for electricians, for mechanics, for new sort of electrical technicians as well, that they're in demand. You can never get hold of one because, and my friends that have gone into that after service, they are now limited companies because they accrue so much cash through the year. They have to become limited so that they're not paying they're paying corporate tax. Thing like that. And that's purely as a, what used to be blue collar rather than white collar, whereas now white collar is one, you'll get a graduate, but it's that measurement. They're going right. But also in the value side of things for service people, you've got people even the armed forces with operational experience, and they've been through, if they enlisted or even as an officer, and they've been through ranks, gaining managerial and command experience in operations in life or death situations, and they see that those old, shall we say, jobs where you still need that intellect. You still got to get the superstars have got the intellect will still be in the big business in the corporate world, but they're seeing now in, say, middle management up to higher management, they like to have veterans who have got this real understanding of leadership, mentorship, bringing people along. So there's all those different values. But I think in the UK, it is, like you said, Chance, it is very, or like Travis said, very much. It could be a fashion thing. It could be just going around the circle of the way it is. But at the minute, I think there's a realization with young people going, what way am I going to progress forward here?
That's a great point. Shaun, thoughts on this?
Yeah, so you were talking about wood shop and how you learned how to plan. Maybe, unless that teacher sucked and didn't know how to teach how to plan, which now you think you know how to plan, but you don't. And that's the way of life. If it's a one and done, now you think you're king of the hill. Now you're the plan master 9000. But if you've never been accountable, held accountable against 1,000 plans, and all those plans were like, I'm not going to say life or death, but had consequences, and the person standing in front of you didn't just shrug their shoulders and say, well, you know what? You've got another 999 to do it right. Good luck. If someone is holding you accountable, that's where you learn how to do things, in my opinion. And that's why the military is a good system. If you're doing things wrong, you'll be held accountable and you'll be expected to make good on that. And that's how you learn. You do it wrong, you get jacked up, you do it right. And so that doesn't happen too commonly out in the modern society that we're in right now. And so I'll give you an example. We're talking about sense of purpose. Travis has mentioned it several times now. You got to have a sense of purpose. Well, there's a lot of people out there who think they know their sense of purpose. In fact, just a couple of days ago, I was in our local grocery store, our supermarket, and someone had said a few things, and I looked at them and said, well, that's probably because you don't know your why. And the person said, yeah, I do. And I said, oh, yeah, cool. What is it? And they stumbled through a paragraph that was convoluted and made no sense. And I said, so again, what's your why? And they made another effort at it. They were kind of making up their why on the fly. And so after we'd gone through about 3 iterations, I said, so, kind of what I'm hearing is you've never thought about it before deeply. You have a sense that you've got a purpose, but you're really not sure what it is. You know that you're doing things, but you're not sure why. And so maybe today you could spend some time thinking about it deeper as to what your why is so that you can be more accountable to that why. And this is what they said. You know what? You're right. And so accountability on a plan in a workshop, if someone says, Chance Burles, and you're 13 years old, Chance Burles, get over here. I want you to make a 4-legged stool. And then by the end of the class or end of the semester, you've got a 3-legged stool that's wobbly. And every time a person sits down on it, it tips over and they bang their head. That's the time when the woodwork teacher says, you're taking wood class again next year. Or maybe could have got involved in it way before that and said, whoa, I said 4 legs, not 3 legs. Pick up the pace, Chance Burles. And so when we're being held accountable, who we're being held accountable by, and for what reasons that accountability is in place, These are all questions that impact a person's life. And so if the teacher in the woodwork shop has got no concern other than when's my next coffee break, chance you learned how to plan at about 1 out of 10. But if you've got the right person at the right time saying the right things in that woodwork class, and it doesn't even have to be a teacher, it could be a peer who holds you accountable. Hey, Chance, he said 4 legs, not 3 legs. And you either say, no, screw it. My plan is 3 legs. Well, okay. There's a lesson in there somewhere. You get to retake the class or not. Maybe you get pushed up to the next grade and someone says, next year, just try a little bit better. Next year, make a 2-legged stool. Push him up to the next grade. Now it's a 1-legged stool. Now there's no legs on the stool. Someone just sits on a piece of flat wood by the time they graduate, and no one's held anyone accountable. And now you're a 30-year-old man that's got a store that sells no-legged stools, and you never learned a freaking thing in life. And so that's the analogy or the example of, if you're not held accountable, then sometimes you don't learn the lessons that you need to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I made the best one-legged stool you can imagine, let me tell you. Travis, what are you thinking?
I'm glad that you brought up that specific topic of the shop teacher who doesn't know how to make a stool. Like, I'm hitting the 1-year mark right now in school, right? So I started school last spring and been going through it, and it seems to me now, I'm obviously older than most students full time. There are a lot of people who teach that don't have any like real life experience doing things. And, as a student, that's a problem, and I don't know how society will address that problem, but I think on it a lot. And we have to, as a society, figure out a way where we can incentivize people who have lived a life of business or finance or what have you, for those people to come back to the profession of teaching the younger generation how to do things. Because when you get an instructor who basically just finished their MBA and their next job is professor, they don't really know a lot about entrepreneurship. You know what I'm saying? Like they ask more questions in class than they have answers, and it is an issue, and I find myself, mentoring my kids and guys who were my young troops back in the day who are now sergeant majors of whatever unit, talking to them and their problems. And, I'm a good guy to talk to because I'm not really in the process anymore. So they can just unload on me and there's no consequences. But I value that like a lot, and it's very fulfilling to be able to kind of give advice to younger people with the experience that I've had. But I think that it is an issue with teachers or professors not really understanding how to mentor or teach, and I think you only get that through age, man, like wisdom, lessons and tenure. We've talked about this several times too. Wisdom is something you acquire over the duration of your life. Even if you encounter a young person who has a level of wisdom, it's probably there's some extraordinary circumstances that cause that to occur. So I'm asking you guys, like, have you noticed, or do you see, or is there any way for you to recognize like a deficiency, I guess, in our level of competence for the people who we have entrusted to teach?
That's a very good question. Tip, have you noticed anything?
Well, when I left, obviously, regular service after 30 years and trained as an actor. We went to university, so I done a degree at university. So I started school, as you said, Trumpus, when I was 47. The nearest age to me was a young lady who's 23. So she was the nearest age to me. So, and she was a mature student as well, but she was 23. But I was an uber mature student. But not only being that age, but having a whole life experience, you become a real asset, I think, in the group that you're going to be working or studying with, because you've got that life experience. And I think having that not only in the class, but I can see the benefits definitely within in the lecturing or the in the teachers sort of like fraternity, but or in that gang, but in your environment as a mature student, and there probably is other mature students there, but with your life experience, I think you become a real valuable, I think, more like a mentor, and you're getting as much, especially intellect, because these young people, they've got massive, they've got natural intellect, some of them, but you've got the intellect, which you've never probably, I don't think, I really untapped my true intellect until, my later years in service before going to university, because, I knew you had a good intelligence, but I just wasn't an academic type of person. And that was it. There's a difference between the intellect and the academic. So when you do come as a mature student with the intellect and the true appetite to study, and that's different, because when you were a young person, it's like a passage of rights, going to college, going to university. And really, is your heart there? Is it just you're just doing what you have to do, and all that accruing all those debts and everything else? Now it's just part of what you have to do. But when you want to go there and you want to do it, and you have the appetite, and you've got life experience, you become a very, very valuable asset. So I think the whole academic world does need that real life experience, especially in the professional, should we say, doctors, even in the arts world as well. People come directly from the arts who are in the industry, who know the highs and lows and the arduous nature of the industry. They know how to download that and pass that on to the students that they're teaching. And I think maybe, and a lot of times academics stay in that little sort of like hierarchical world where they are writing books or plagiarizing somebody else's books and creating stuff and doing this and selling their mates' books and doing this and doing that. And it's a bizarre world they live in. But I think if you just have professionals budgeted out to instruct, and also with a very healthy dose of mature students within each grouping, it makes a big difference, I think.
Absolutely. Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, I think I've been chewing on what Travis said, just quietly in the back of my mind, just a parallel process for the last, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes or whatever, probably longer. The first time that he said, we're a bunch of gray beards, or we're older dudes who have tenure. And so I 100% agree with that. That's what we are, and we do have tenure. But it's, to me, what I've been chewing on is, at what point do you start believing that? And how deeply do you start believing it? Because the sooner that you can believe it and the deeper that you can believe it, the better you are for those around you, given that you have some tenure. And so I'm not suggesting that at 23, if you've done a few things, that now you're supposed to be wise and mature and capable of easily leading the world. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not saying that if you're 60 years old and you've got a gray beard, that you're wise and you're capable of leading the world. I'm not saying that either. What I am saying is, Shaun at 20 versus Shaun at 60 is a completely different beast. And so what I have inside of me now to share with others is has far greater value, or has more wealth attached to it than when I was 20. I could kick a lot of ass at 20 and I can kick less ass now, but intellectually or academically speaking, I can kick way more ass now than I could have at 20. And so I think that there's a natural ebb and flow to life. And I think that if you've done enough things in your life, as you get older, or you get more gray beard, or you get more tenure, there's a point, and I'm not sure where it is. And this is what I'm going to ask you guys. I do believe there's a point in all of us where, if you've done enough things in life, that you cross a point where you could begin to serve at a higher level for those around you rather than not. And so I probably was way more reluctant to share my thoughts and try to lead and try to do what we're doing right now in this podcast. I was way more reluctant to do that just a few years ago, even though I was capable of it then. I just didn't believe it. And so I think there's a line for me anywhere where I had to cross that threshold line of starting to believe that I can be helpful in this capacity. And so, you know, Tip just recently was on, was it Piccadilly Circus, or was it Trafalgar Square, or was it on the was it on the Queen's Own Castle at the time? I don't even know. But dude, you were like 1,000 foot tall in that billboard that you're on, and it was magnificent. I mean, what a moment in a person's life to be able to see a freaking massive billboard in a notable location that reflects an awesome life lived, that should be inspiring to every single person that walks by it, to include yourself. And so, at what point do we in our lives walk past our own billboard, or our own notable achievement, or our own realization that, yeah, I've done a few things and I can be helpful now at my age? At what point does everyone do that? I think it's different for everyone. But I'm curious now for Travis and Tip, as to what point in your older age did you snap to and think, yeah, I guess I have done that. And yeah, I guess I can use that to be more helpful.
Tip, what do you think?
For me, I don't think it's a single point. It's a very gradual thing. And I think it's, we talked this before in different, podcasts we've done. It's like, when I was a corporal, when I became a mighty leader corporal, you go back into a fighting company, and you're like the senior corporal, and you're like, you're already, because when you're a corporal, I always, and that to me is in my corps, in my service, is that's the magic. When you're the corporal, you're a section commander, you're the god, you're the dad. The only next person after that god is the regimental sergeant major, and he's a god. And before that, in between, is a corporal. It's the most important job in my corps, is a corporal, and he's the dad. So that point there, that's when you're that mentor. But then as you jump and you incrementally jump, you go up ranks, you get there, you get promoted, and you end up where you are. But at each of those points, you still have your responsibility as a mentor and as a leader and as a commander. It grows each time. It gets bigger, and your effectiveness should grow with it. But also, I think the respect you gain, if you're good at what you do, you will gain that, and it'll go through automatically. So that to me isn't something you consciously do. I think that happens, and you carry on with it. But when it got to the end and I made a decision to do something different, I just got in this world, and you cannot shy away with all this life experience. And a lot of things I do now is getting veterans into the arts, and I realize how magical and how beneficial it is to their lives, get involved in the things that I've been involved in. And it was quite an accidental thing, but now I realize I'm that bloke now. I'm the guy that goes, yeah, come see me. I'll get you sorted. We'll go this year. I'll get you involved in becoming an actor, how you want to be. Then just, what I mean? Like, just get involved with these different, groups I'm working with, and that's it. But it's not, they're not looking for me to give them it. It's them. They've already got the magic. All you're doing is imparting that little bit of, I know how to do it, because, and all those, remember the tumbles and falls, the experiences where we brush ourselves off, crack on with it. We've all had that. I still get them now. We get them every day. And like Travis said, I learn something every day, and that brings a smile on my face. I have a little chuckle and going, that's the new thing I've learned today. And I'm thank you very much for that, there. And let's just move on. I mean, you get it. You go, how come I've lived all these years and I've never had that little bit of nugget of wonder you've given me, and you've given me it today. And every day I get that. So if I can keep imparting that and doing that and transforming, especially our community. I mean, I'm a veteran, so that's what it is. So I've accidentally fallen into this thing where, come to me, I'll speak to you, and we'll see what we can do. But you own it then. It's not mine, it's yours. And you are you, carry on with it. So like, in a way, that's the same as university. Are you a lecturer? Are you the senior guy or senior person in your intake? You've got an important role to play. And I think it's an accidental thing. I don't think I think there's not a point. It's a gradual thing. I think that's what you were after, Shaun.
That's a great point. Trav, what are you thinking?
I think sometimes you don't really realize it, and you're just put in that position, man. You're just like, the class turns around and everybody's looking at you like, what do you think? And you're like, we can hit some stories, I guess. Like, I guess the first time I kind of really realized that I was a no kidding like mentor. Like I was already a team sergeant, and I think it's either 2009 or 2010. We were in Iraq, and I had my team in Iraq, and for some kind of extraordinary reasons, my team had to go back to the States because we were going to turn around and redeploy with another company right back to with another troop right back to Iraq. So we had to redeploy as a team, and the war had been going on for several years by now, and the kind of the SOP or the standard was the company deployed as a company. So there were support assets in place that would square away your transportation, bring over the S4 guys, they'd weigh your pallets, like all this stuff was the kind of like, it was a machine that was already turning. And my guys on my team, they had never deployed really as just a team. And I was like, I kind of took it for granted. Like when I was first in SF, that's all we did was deploy as a team, so I was the engineer, you'd organize transportation, make sure the bird's online, like all that stuff. And it just seemed like, hey, Brandon, man, make sure we got trans in place, blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, kind of, who do I call for that? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, dude, I literally have to teach these guys how to do this because they've not done it, and it's no hit on them. They just never had to do that. So, that was kind of the first time that I realized really like, oh, dude, I'm old. Like I've been around to see the full evolution of this whole thing. And now I'm teaching these guys how to do it back in the day, like we used to do it, and, that happened. And then, my last job in the service, I was a chief instructor at one of our schools in the schoolhouse, and then you're not only mentoring students, but you're mentoring instructors as well, and, those, for me, those times in the service were my most rewarding times. There was a lot of good times, but when you're teaching the next generation and seeing them develop and stuff, that was really super rewarding for me, and I carried that on. My first kind of entrepreneurial venture outside of the service after I retired, I had a gym, CrossFit gym I had for several years. And, when I started it from zero, literally it was the side of my garage, with 2 clients up to, hundreds in a larger facility. And, seeing those people develop skills that they never thought that they would achieve, super rewarding. I love that, and even now as a student, I'm in school, and as you can imagine, like my last term, I had a history class that was kind of postmodern stuff, but a lot of dealing with colonialism and things like that in the Middle East. And then the thing in Israel happened, and I'm obviously the oldest dude in the room, and I have a lot of experience in the Middle East. So there were several times when things were being talked about in class, and everybody was just like, "What do you think? Have you been there?" Like, yeah, several times. Like I spent years there. Like, so, that and just passing that knowledge on. Like, hey, this is my opinion. These are the friends that I still have who live there. These are the friends I have who have made their way to the States. This is their opinion, or at least what they've told me. And just being able to give the next generation your point of view, your experience, not tell them you're right or wrong. Just like, hey, this is what I saw. This is kind of what I think about it. You can think what you want to think about it. This is where I'm coming at it from. And then let them come up with their own opinion, and continue to have input, because it's just an exchange of information is all it is. It's not, I don't think of you as a lesser person if you don't agree with me, or I hope you don't think I'm a lesser person because I disagree with you. It's just as a disagreement, and that's it, and again, we have to be open to another opinion and open to receiving information so that we can all make a more informed, decision for our next step,
Absolutely. I I have 2 points on this. One is I think what we're talking about is we're going back to fundamentals, right? If you have the fundamentals of really anything, then you can apply them forward. And that's, I think, what we really want to teach that next generation. What we want to pass on is those fundamentals. And my wife works at the University of Alberta, and so I hear this quite often. She actually worked in the education library. So to answer your guys' question about what's happening in terms of academia and what's going on with the education system, from that relationship, she's told me many things of like the fact that education is like a backup for a lot of people. So they just look to get a degree because they need a degree, but then once they have the degree and they realize they can't work in the environment that they're working in or that they've studied for, then they go back to school to get an education degree so that they can then teach. And it's just a backup. So they never had any desire to be a teacher first off, and have no experience in the field that they're then going to teach. And it reminded me, there was a joke I saw a little while ago. It was the Egyptian studies is the first pyramid scheme, because there aren't many jobs in terms of Egyptian studies, but you study pyramids and then realize you can't get a job and have to go back to school to then teach other people how to study pyramids, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, but the point being is that, again, it goes back to that fundamental state of what it is, what's the basics that everybody needs to know. And I've been having this thought since we started talking, was the fact of like, I learned to shoot with iron sights. It's a very basic way of shooting. I'm sure you guys all learned how to shoot on iron sights. And yet there are lots of people that have never, in nowadays, times nowadays, that they've never used iron sights ever. They've always relied on optics. In the same manner, we grew up in a realm where there was no social media. So if you wanted media, you had to watch the news, or you read the newspaper, or you picked up a magazine. Like, it was a physical thing. Whereas nowadays, the media is everywhere, and kids growing up have never had the experience or the fundamentals of not having that constantly in their face. And so what I'm wondering for you guys is the maybe advice that you would give to somebody that is, they've never had the fundamentals, right? Now they want to get better, they want to do these things, they want to explore, they want to, become parents, they want to be able to teach, they want to expand their world, but they have no fundamentals of how to do any of that. So the question I have for you guys is, where do you start? Travis, what do you think?
Depending on if they're looking for something specific, we've had this talk before, you need to find a coach. If you're looking for a specific skill, shooting, if you're looking for another skill, fitness, whatever it is, find a coach. Those coaches, if they're decent, they will build on the fundamentals, And then when it comes to living life, a lot of times that should fall on the parents, but nowadays, I guess, or even, I don't know, I guess all through history, it's questionable as to whether the parents have the fundamentals mastered or not. But, at a base level, like just putting it on that you have to begin at square one. This is a thing that I think a lot of military people really understand well, is starting as a private. You start as a boot, and you earn your stripes as you progress through the ranks. And I think a lot of maybe this younger generation, once they graduate from school, they think they're going to become the CEO of some high-tech company, and that's just the way things work. And I expect to get respect now. Like, I expect people to see me and know that I'm here, and they don't really understand. And maybe that's a young person thing, but the military does a good job of making sure you understand that there is a progression here. And, as you move through the ranks, you acquire more knowledge, more skill, and then you immediately turn around and impart that knowledge and skill on the soldiers that are below you. And the ones that are above you continue to do that to you. And it's a very understood progression, so trying or doing the best you can to emphasize the fundamentals in every single thing are I guess a start, and then observing those fundamentals put into action, and continuing to make your training plan, if you will, and fraggle that plan as life goes on, and reinforce those fundamentals and refine them as you live.
Absolutely. Tip, any thoughts?
For me, I support that completely. I think if you're uncertain, and this is if you're uncertain, and if you do not have that, should we say that I mean, a lot of people take it for granted, though, but that parental advisory, positive parental advisory, because I'd say probably more so nowadays, and a lot of young people don't have that, that positive parental input. But if you don't have that, I think what you should have is if you can, if it's affordability or if you can access it, is a coach, or can give somebody, even a life coach, towards, you know, your direction. But I'd say more so is look around, and people that you've trusted, I'd say teachers that you know, you respected and you got it, you know, I mean, people that you knew at school, or people in the community or in your family who you trust, you approach them and you ask for their wisdom, because their wisdom, and if they love you, both friendship wise and family wise, they will give you every ounce of their wisdom that they will give you. But I'd say gear it all up, get all that information in, and look at it and make your choices. Don't try and follow anybody else's path. It's your path. But obviously, for those sounding boards, just do it to people who love you and trust you, and watch out for the weasels, because there's weasels everywhere. And obviously, if people say so and so's a weasel, but you don't think that, just be wary of it. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to bleep a couple of these, a couple of things I've
Oh
been
yeah,
marking down
do
timestamps, but
apologize.
it's all good. Sean, you got any thoughts on
Oops.
this?
Yes, there are some weasels out there, that's for sure. I think that one of the things that just listening to the fellas that come to mind is fundamentals. We've already said it, they're imperative. But nowadays, people are trying to buy the fundamentals rather than earn the fundamentals. And so, you know, their kid is maybe 6 years old, and the kid has seen a soccer commercial, and the kid says, I want to play soccer. By the end of the day, they've got the most expensive soccer kit on, with the most expensive soccer ball, most expensive cleats, and they're driven right to the soccer pitch, hand carried to the start line, rested down gently, and then are told, your $1,000 soccer ball, let's kick it around a bit. And to me, that's like, that is buying an experience rather than earning an experience. Now, I'm not saying that the kid's supposed to run backwards to the soccer pitch in their bare feet and kick around a soup can before they kick a soccer ball. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that there's a line that I see modern affluent households choosing the wrong side of the line. They will choose to provide the entire experience at no cost spared, or no cost spared. They will buy the entire experience, hand deliver it to the kid that may only be in the moment for an hour, and then they're not interested because they never earned any of it. There was no sweat, blood, or tears. There was no pre-thought before they got to the soccer field. I think one way to do it is, you want to go play soccer? Cool. All right, go get your stuff organized, into the car, and we're leaving in 15 minutes. You can drive the kid to the soccer field and then say, right, I'll be back in an hour. What are you going to do in that hour? What are you kicking around? Oh, we don't have a ball. Let's go find a ball. Let's go find a cheap ball. And so have that kid start at maybe more of a ground up rather than at the top down. Because if you provide it all on a silver platter, there's nowhere to go but down. If you provide just the bare essentials, there's nowhere to go but up. And so by spending $1,000 on the latest, greatest hockey gear for day one of hockey practice, the kids got it all right there. They haven't earned anything. They don't have the hand-me-down socks. They don't have the hand-me-down stick. They don't have the dull skates from their brother or sister that they're kind of embarrassed about. Everything is top-notch, extra expensive, professional level on day one, and it's never been earned. It's never been, the parent will load everything into the vehicle. The parent will say, okay, we've got 30 seconds. You got to get off your Nintendo. Let's go to the first practice. That's not earned. That's all hand delivered. And so the fundamentals have almost flip flopped, where rather than learning from the trenches up, someone is being delivered to the stadium level view, and they never get down to the trenches to learn the lessons. So fundamentals, I feel, are kind of flippity flopped.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Travis, you got some thoughts?
I think that it's incumbent upon us knowing that helping out parents and making sure they know that, because most parents are not, they're not maliciously trying to make their kid a crappy hockey player, they're by getting them all the nice kit. You're trying to set your kid up for success, and you probably feel like, oh man, this is going to set him up for success, so I'm going to buy him all this. He's going to be a rock star, and that's generally, I agree, that's not the way it works out. It was funny you mentioned your wet jeans earlier. I was watching a snowboard show, and this young guy was talking about Gen Xers. Man, they're up here snowboarding in jeans. And I laughed, and I was like, "What are you laughing at?" I was like, "I've done that a bunch of times," So knowing, like just starting off with like, "Hey man, if you want to snowboard, here's a snowboard. Rock out, go do it, and then that's square one, right? Like, probably when your kid gets home that afternoon, he's like, "Hey man, can I get some snow pants?" You're like, "Yes." Learn the lesson. Probably hurt a little bit, right? Yeah, good one. And then just kind of progress in that way. But I think most parents are trying to set their kids up for success. But I agree with you, and we see that a lot now, especially, on social media type stuff. Instagram in the tactical realm, that's a big deal with kit and firearms and optics and all that stuff. I get a lot of questions about dudes that want to, they want to shoot well, move well, communicate well, and all that stuff. And, when it comes to shooting, like, hey, whatever you're planning to spend on firearms, optics, and stuff, just take all of that money, buy a Glock 19, and then spend the rest on ammo, and learn the fundamentals and get the reps in and build the fundamental skills, and then, add tech as we go along, and you'll become better. But again, we find ourselves in that position as the mentors to mentor, to tell people that it's important to build these foundational skills, because that's what's going to carry you through when everything else fails. Is the perfect execution of the fundamentals is, that's virtuosity, right? So that's what we're after.
Absolutely.
I do want to throw one more thing in there just as an example. So this year, out on the Fat Tar bike, I've been wearing a little bit more of my high-tech gear that I've been racing and riding in for the last 25 years. I do have some high-tech gear, but all last year in the winter, you'll have seen nearly every single ride that I was in, or in the summer, spring, fall, whatever. You'll have seen me riding in the equivalent of jeans. So I'd be riding in a hoodie or a cotton hoodie, or I'd be riding in a t-shirt, or I'd be riding in a pair of old board shorts or whatever. And so it's not because I don't have all the gear, because I do, because I've earned the right to have all the gear to be able to face all of the hardships of hard races. So I've got lots of stuff. But last year I set up a challenge for myself to go out and ride in jeans, as it were. And so every day I'd be out there in all the cotton, in none of the high tech gear, and kind of like suffering more than I needed to, unnecessarily suffering, because that's kind of the way my brain is wired. Because I can ride well enough, and because I've been out there long enough, those things don't sometimes provide the appropriate amount of reminder that life can be hard at times. And so I dressed accordingly to teach myself that lesson in the miserable weather, even though I had gear hanging in my closet that could have wiped away all of that suffering. I chose to last year dedicate the year to old schooly gear. But, these last few days I've been riding in all the Gore-Tex, all of the swag. But by riding in cotton versus riding in Gore-Tex, what you do is you get perspective, or you get context. And so, to Travis's point, as we get better at things, I don't think it's like an exponential or a linear trajectory where it just keeps building on itself and we just keep getting more and more magnificent. And the lessons that we learned years ago somehow fade into the past. And now they're just written on a piece of paper that says, I've done hard things. I think what we have to do is continue to do hard things. And the things that were hard for us when we're 20 that might not be hard for us in our 60s, we've got to find a way to tweak that so that they're re-hard again, that they are as hard as they were back then by adjusting what's going on today to face a little bit of adversity. And I'm not saying that every single day has to be riding in wet jeans day, but there has to be context where on the days that you are wearing Gore-Tex, you value it, you appreciate it, you take it for what it is, for the awesomeness of high-tech gear versus riding in your bare feet and a loincloth and being a savage. While you're out there learning those hard lessons, they should teach you how good life can be versus sometimes how tough life can be.
Yeah. I have a great point on this one real fast is that my boys got a very keen reminder on this one. And I'm a big proponent of having good winter gear because it's Canada. It gets cold, right? You should have good gear so that you can stay warm when it's cold. And the boys went out the other day, and I was like, okay, guys, it's like we're gonna go skating. We're gonna be out in the cold for a while. You grab your skates, grab your gear, get your snow pants, get your blah, 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 grab all your stuff. Let's get going. And they started getting dressed, and one threw his jacket on, grabbed a small pair of mitts, and they were like, okay, cool, good to go. And grabbed their skates, and out they went. And I was like, okay, cool. You want to play that game? I'm down. I brought their stuff with me. I just put it in the car, but they went out skating in pants and an unzipped jacket and no gloves. And I was like, cool, we're gonna skate for a while. And we skated for a little while, and they told me how much their hands were cold and their ears hurt, and my legs are cold and my knees hurt and I'm like, yep, okay, cool. Now you've learned that lesson, excellent. So when we came in for snacks to get warm and toast up, I was like, okay, good. I brought your guys' stuff. Are you guys gonna bring this next time? And they were like, yes, absolutely, 100%. I'm gonna bring it next time. I'm like, okay, good, because you're right. Travis, you said this at the very beginning. Some lessons they gotta hurt. They gotta feel them so that they can remember them next time. And it's not like they're gonna get frostbite minus 16 right off the bat. Right? We're only gonna be out on the ice for maybe 20 minutes, but it hurt, and they understood it, and they were very smart to bring their. They went out to shovel the walk this morning, and they were in their snow pants, in their pants, their big gloves, their hats, like they were warm. So it's you gotta be open as a parent, especially to letting your kids make those mistakes. Travis, you got something?
Yeah, we speak on it quite a bit actually. Like the suffrage is a thing. I think suffrage, it makes you really appreciate the ordinary. And I think the veteran community will probably agree with like the reason that a lot of us are so. We have a lust for life now is because we've seen kind of like some pretty low lows, and then those experiences make you really appreciate an average day, like today is a good day. Like it was uneventful and we went through it and it was awesome and such a gift because we've seen days that are not ordinary. And they're not ordinary to the negative. And then when there's an extraordinary day to the positive, you're even that much more appreciative, like those experiences like snowboarding in jeans or falling into a creek on a hike in the snow and then having to wear wet boots home and all those little things. Like the next time you're out for a hike and you got snow pants on that are dry, you're going to be like, you're going to think back and you're going to really appreciate those snow pants more than you would have had you worn them, from the beginning. So it's kind of through suffering that we really learn to appreciate the ordinary.
Absolutely. Tip, you got any thoughts on this?
We are, so should we say, we're products of our experiences, and I'd say our experiences that all of us, we strive for and we wanted, and and we're just lucky enough still to be here to talk about it, and obviously hopefully pass on some wisdom from our experiences. And but it was all of us were volunteers for it. Simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaun, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm thinking of back to Gore-Tex on how my very first set of Gore-Tex socks were 2 bread bags. Just plastic bread bags. And so not only did I wear plastic bread bags when I was a kid hunting, I would wear bread bags in the army because at the time the Canadian Armed Forces didn't have a massive budget and there were no such thing as Gore-Tex socks. So I'd go up in the Arctic with like bread bags on my feet. And it wasn't that I would wear them constantly because, of course, I'm aware of what trench foot can become. And there's a balance between bread bag on and bread bag off. And so that is kind of like a great example for life. If you get yourself in conditions that are heinous, like -60, and you're in environments where the snow is so deep that sometimes when the snow gets down into your muckluck, it's dodgy. It's like no joke time. And so you've got to come up with ways to mitigate the risks. And while you're mitigating the risks, you're learning lessons constantly. Bread bag on, bread bag off. And so without the extremeness of life, without the going out there and pushing the envelope, without like trying to get across that creek as a 14-year-old, if you don't do those kind of things, if you don't push yourself in ways that you've never pushed yourself before, you'll never get to these points where you come up with solutions that work for you that then you can pass on to others. Like, no joke, there were times in my military career where my entire section had bread bags on their feet. It's ridiculous to think, but those were the times that we had. And again, if anyone listens to this and thinks that I don't understand what trench foot means or how bread bags should be on all the time or not, I do. I do understand these things. It's an example of the times that I lived through that we had to do things that are unusual in our modern time today. The context between what is normal today, throwing on Gore-Tex socks, versus what was normal back then, throwing on bread bags. And so I've done both and I can contextualize against them. I can understand what is difficult and what is easy. You know what's easy? Gore-Tex socks. You know what's hard? Bread bags. You know what's easy? Riding a mountain bike in the winter with all the swag on. You know what's hard? Riding a mountain bike in winter with all the cotton on. And I think that we have to remind ourselves of these from time to time. If you've got entire warehouses full of all of the sexiest Gore-Tex gear, from time to time, you've got to put on cotton and go suffer a little bit, in my opinion.
I like that. I like that. I think that's a great place to shut her down for the afternoon. This has been a fantastic conversation. I really do appreciate Travis and Tip. Shaun, this has been awesome. I really do appreciate it. Let's get some final thoughts on anything we've covered so far, which has been quite a bit. Parenting, society, suffrage, anything at all still bubbling on the back of your head. Tip, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll work our way
But
down.
so I apologize for my loose lips and my rude words that you had to bleep out. But I'm Irish, and that just goes with the bag. I apologize for that. And what was the final little bit? Was oh, you said afternoon. I was like going, do you not realize I'm not a professional actor? So looking at my head, remember the face for radio, I need some serious beauty sleep. It's now 10:15 in the evening. So therefore I need to go and get my beautiful head down. Yeah.
Roger that. I love it. Travis, any final thoughts?
Participate, man. I guess we had a brief moment where we were talking about community and meeting your neighbors and things. Like, participate in your community. Get out there, meet them, and be a part of it. And learn who lives with you, learn who their children are, learn how to help each other, and participate.
Love it. Trav, or Shaun, I should say. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. Participate, and not just in your neighborhood, but in your digital neighborhood. And so, just like we are right now, participating in our little neighborhood called the collective, and it shouldn't be a chore. I look forward to these conversations. Like I said in my live IG chat before we started this, so I was in my IG maybe half an hour, 45 minutes before we kicked into this one. And I literally said how much I'm looking forward to seeing Tip and Travis in this conversation today. And that's because they are my neighborhood. They are my neighbors. They are my friends. They're guys that I look forward to learning from. They're guys I look forward to bouncing ideas off. They're guys I look forward to making me more curious about my day, thinking about some of the things that they've said. And so your neighborhood doesn't have to be just the guy across the street from you. It's the guy across the screen from you. If you move into a good digital neighborhood, you'll always look forward to talking to your neighbors.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to expand on that a little bit more. Is that you gotta do it on purpose. I heard this song just a little while ago for the first time, and it's called "Love You on Purpose," and that the whole song is all about doing all the things that you're supposed to do, recognizing that you're going to fail at it sometimes. Yeah, it's going to go bad sometimes. Yeah, these things happen. Learn, build, grow consistently every day. And I just want to say, so you want to get involved in your neighborhood? Do it on purpose. Get involved. Get involved with your jujitsu neighborhood. Get involved with your gym neighborhood. Get involved with your digital neighborhood. Get involved. Just get involved, and do it on purpose. And that's all I got for today. So we'll see you all next week. Thanks for watching. Gmo.
Gmo.